Welcome to Jim Rohn Treasures. Today, I want to begin with something very real. Something I believe you've felt somewhere in your life. There were days when I worked from morning until night. I tried, I pushed, I chased every opportunity. Yet at the end of the month, when I opened my wallet, the only thing I saw was emptiness. That feeling was sharp. Not because the money was little, but because I didn't understand why I worked so hard and still couldn't escape financial pressure. I remember the night sitting alone, the yellow light, the room so quiet, I could hear my own breathing. I looked at the nameless expenses and asked myself, was I born to live like this forever? I wasn't lacking effort. I was lacking direction. No one had ever taught me how to manage money. I only knew how to work to earn it, but I didn't know how to let money help me live a life of freedom. Until the day I heard a sentence that changed the entire direction of my life. If you don't change today, in 10 years, you'll still be in the exact same place. That sentence felt like someone placed a huge mirror in front of me. I saw myself tired, struggling, and most importantly, never truly in control of my life. From that moment, I began searching for principles that could help me start over. Not get-rich tricks, not secrets from magazines, but life principles I could apply in the everyday life of an ordinary person. And those principles, small as they were, pulled me from someone who was always short on money into someone who knew how to create, keep, and multiply what I had. Today, I want to share those 6 principles with you. They changed me, and they might change you. And I hope you'll stay until the end, because the 6th principle doesn't just help you manage money. It changes the way you see wealth and the person you want to become. Let's begin. Principle 1, pay yourself first. For a long period of my life, I believed that if I just worked hard, everything would get better. I worked nonstop, took on extra jobs, sacrificed rest, and thought effort would save me. But every month was the same at the end. I had nothing left for myself. I still remember one night, a few days after payday, I opened my wallet and only saw a few small bills. That feeling wasn't just disappointment. It was frustration with myself. I had worked all month, yet somewhere in rushed spending decisions and moments of weakness, all my effort was gone. I told myself, maybe I need to earn more. But even in months when I did earn more, the result was the same. I ended up with nothing. And that was when I realized a truth I later called my turning point. Problem wasn't how much I earned, it was my habits. A mentor once told me, if you can't keep a small part of your first dollar, you won't keep your first million either. That sentence hit me like cold water to the face. I realized I had always paid the world first, paid the bills, paid my wants, paid my emotions, paid everything except myself. I let life decide my future. I let emotions decide my wallet. And I let old habits decide my results. From that day on, I began practicing a new discipline, one I would later share with thousands. Pay yourself first. Not when there's leftover. Not when everything is stable. But the moment the first dollar enters your hand, I chose 10%. But honestly, the number doesn't matter. What matters is that I prioritized my future before anything else. When I began, I thought it would be hard. I didn't earn much. I had many expenses. But then I learned something I believe is true for everyone. You're not poor because you have little money. You're poor because you don't save any for yourself. When I began keeping 10%, the thing that changed wasn't my wallet. It was me. I began feeling a sense of control. A sense that I was building something small but mine. I always imagined the money I saved as soldiers. Each dollar was a warrior I sent out with the mission of bringing more warriors back. But to have an army, I first needed to keep them. And the strange thing was, when I paid myself first, I didn't feel as short as I feared. I spent more consciously. I knew where my money went. And I felt a sense of freedom even before the amount grew much. Freedom doesn't come from how much you earn. Freedom comes from how well you control what you have. If you're hearing this, I want you to try one small action. This month, pay yourself first. 10%, 5%, even 1%. The number doesn't matter. What matters is the message you send yourself, I matter enough to be prioritized. and you'll see saving the first dollar opens the door to saving the bigger ones. But then I discovered something even more important, that keeping money is only half of the journey to freedom. You can pay yourself the first 10%, but if the remaining 90% is swept away by emotions, by unconscious spending habits, you'll end up in the same place. And that lesson, the lesson about how to use the rest, changed my entire view of money. Principle 2, spend with discipline. After learning to pay myself first, I thought I had found the most important key to money. But then I discovered a truth, not easy to accept. You can save 10%, but if the remaining 90% disappears unconsciously, you'll return to zero. And that was exactly what happened to me. I remember looking back at my expenses, though, at that time. I didn't even have a notebook. I only vaguely remembered buying this, paying for that, indulging myself in moments of weakness. And when I sat down to calculate, I was shocked to realize it wasn't that I didn't earn money, it was that I let money slip away without noticing. There's an image that always haunted me, a leaky bucket. You can pour in as much water as you want, but if the bucket has holes, the water still drains out. That's how most of us use money. We rush to earn more while no one stops to patch the holes called unconscious spending. I used to spend money like an emotional reflex. Sad, buy something. Stressed, reward myself. Under pressure, spend a little to feel better. Tired, tell myself, just this once, I deserve it. But just this once was the trap that kept me poor for years. A mentor once told me, the poor spend money to feel good right now. The rich spend money to become better in the long run. That sentence froze me. I realized I was spending like people who are unconsciously poor, buying to fill emotional gaps, not to build a future. So I began a small habit, more important than I expected, writing down every expense. Not to control, but to stay conscious. Because when you write it down, you see something emotions usually hide. Money is leaving you by your own decisions. The first day I wrote everything, I felt embarrassed. I saw expenses that gave me no real value. Things I didn't need, things I bought because someone else had them, small habits that weren't small at all when added up. Then I started asking myself one simple question, the question that changed how I spent. Is this purchasing emotion or value? That question was like a switch. I began realizing some things made me happy for 10 minutes, regretful for a week. Some spending decisions were just ways to escape discomfort inside me. And some things I thought were not much were actually stealing the future I was trying to build. I slowly understood. Spending with discipline isn't miserable saving. Spending with discipline is using logic, not emotional holes. Something strange happened when I became disciplined. I felt lighter, less worried, and I realized I didn't need as much as before to feel okay. I once thought financial freedom meant earning a lot, but I learned financial freedom begins when you can say no to things that don't lead you to the future you want. And I want to ask you this. In the past week, how much did you spend just to soothe your emotions? You don't have to tell me. Just tell yourself. Because change doesn't start from the wallet. It starts from awareness. When you spend with discipline, you don't just save money. You save your life from the loop of spend, regret, spend, regret. And then I discovered something else, something that can change a person's entire financial journey. Keeping money isn't enough. You need to let money create more money. That's no longer about spending. That's about building a future. And that's why I had to learn an even more important lesson, because after learning to control every dollar I spent, I realized a person is only truly free when their money works for them even when they're not working. Principle 3, let money make money. There was a moment in my life when I realized something that had kept me stuck for years. I only knew how to work for money, but my money wasn't working for me. Most people are like that. We're taught how to work, but not how to let money work. We're taught how to earn money, but no one says earning is just the first step. I remember the day my mentor asked me a question that kept me silent for a long time. Jim, how many dollars in your wallet are working and how many are just sitting around? I checked my pocket and every dollar I had was sitting around. None were growing. None were returning to me with new friends. I worked hard to earn money, but the money I earned wasn't doing anything. I was serving money instead of letting money serve me. And that's when I understood if I wanted real freedom, I had to stop living on my own labor and start living on the labor of my money. I started simply by putting a small part into savings, not much, but I called it the training camp for my money. I understood that money is like a seed. If you leave it in a drawer, it sits there and dies slowly. But if you plant it in the right soil, it grows branches you never expected. Like a seed, money needs soil, the right environment, time to grow, discipline to not dig it up every time you get impatient, faith that it will bloom in its season. The first day I invested, I was nervous, afraid to lose, afraid to be wrong, afraid what little I had would evaporate. But then my mentor told me something that snapped me out of it. Jim, the greatest risk is not investing. The greatest risk is doing nothing. Because if you don't invest, you're telling your future, my life isn't going to get any better. Money left idle loses to inflation. Money left idle gets spent emotionally. Money left idle won't protect you in hard times. Only when you send money out to work will it return with its friends. I started reading investment books, not to get rich quickly, but to understand the rules. I learned about stocks, funds, small real estate, small businesses, and even investing in myself. I discovered something rarely discussed. Investing isn't about choosing where to put money. Investing is choosing who you become when you put money there. Invest in learning, you become someone capable of earning more. Invest in health, you have the energy to do bigger things. Invest in small assets, you gain additional income. Invest in experience, you lose less to fear, panic, and mistakes. One day, I looked back and realized the money I created had begun creating more money. Not fast, not loud, but steady, persistent, like a small stream quietly flowing, but eventually enough to fill a lake. I want to ask you a question, one that might change your thinking tonight. Right now, do you have any dollars working for you? If the answer is no, don't worry, many years went by when I had none. But keep that question with you because it is the starting point. Investing doesn't require you to be rich. Investing is how ordinary people become rich. And when you let money create more money, you'll realize what I realized. Earning money makes you busy. Letting money earn money makes you free. But when I started investing, I soon faced another challenge. A challenge not about numbers or markets, but about the person inside me. Because money doesn't grow only through knowledge, but through emotional control. And that's when I had to learn a principle more important than money itself. Principle 4, emotional discipline. I used to think that financial freedom was only about money. How much you earn, how much you keep, how much you invest. But the longer I lived and the more I observed, the more I understood something I had never dared to admit before. People do not fall because they lack money. They fall because they cannot control their emotions. And I was one of them. I still remember a period in my life when everything was difficult. I invested wrong. My business failed. My income dropped. And the thing that terrified me most was not losing money, but the feeling of losing faith in myself. Many nights I lay staring at the ceiling and thought, am I capable of getting back up again? That was when I understood the greatest enemy of your finances is not the market, not risk, not failure. The greatest enemy is the emotional storm inside each person. Fear, impatience, pride, the feeling that I have to prove something, the feeling that if I don't buy now, I'll miss my chance, the comparison with others, and those moments of rewarding yourself to soothe the hurt inside. I had made all of those mistakes. There was a time I invested just because I was too afraid of missing out. I rushed in. I jumped without thinking. And a few weeks later, I lost almost all of that money. But I didn't blame the market. I knew the fault was mine. I invested with emotion, not understanding. And there were other times when I bought things I didn't need just to escape the feeling of failure. I thought spending money would make me feel better, but it only made me weaker. I began to realize a bitter truth. You can learn every financial strategy in the world, but if you cannot control your emotions, you will destroy your own effort. Emotional discipline is not having no emotions. Everyone has emotions. So do I. Emotional discipline is the ability not to make important decisions when your mind is in its worst state. It is pausing for a moment when you want to spend really fast. It is waiting a little longer when you want to invest in a hurry. It is learning to step back to see the big picture. It is knowing that emotions pass, but the consequences of a wrong decision do not. A mentor once told me, "Jim, don't let a temporary mood ruin your long-term future." I wrote that sentence in my notebook and read it every day. I began practicing a small but important habit. Whenever I wanted to spend money because of emotion, I counted to 30 and asked myself one question: is this serving value or serving emotion? 90% of the time, I realized it was just emotion. I also set a rule for myself when investing. Do not decide when I am too happy or too sad, because strong emotions are always deceivers. They make you think you are wiser than you are, or weaker than you really are. I learned to slow down, to breathe, and to observe myself. And I realized something. When your emotions are stable, your financial decisions are stable. No wealth comes from panic. No freedom comes from impatience. Freedom comes from calmness. I want to ask you this, and I want you to answer honestly with yourself. In the past few months, how many of your financial decisions were made because of emotion and not because of reason? That answer matters, because it will tell you whether you are free or being controlled by emotion. And when I began to train emotional discipline, I realized there was another factor quietly shaping my finances, a factor that can lift you up or pull you down very quickly. Not money, not knowledge, but the environment you live in. Principle 5, financial environment. There was a lesson I only understood much later. A lesson not taught in school, but one that decides almost all of a person's financial results. It is the lesson about environment. We often think finances depend on skills, income, or opportunities. But the more I grew up, the more I realized this truth. You do not become the person you want. You become the person who matches the environment you are in. And that is true for money as well. I still remember when I was young, I spent time with some friends who were very kind, very fun, but we all shared one habit. Whenever we had money, we spent it all. We often said to each other, "Money is made to enjoy. We'll figure out tomorrow later." "We'll figure out tomorrow later" was exactly the sentence that kept me stuck for many years. I did not realize that it was that very environment, the small habits, the familiar sayings, that was quietly shaping how I used money. No one in our group thought about saving or investing, not because we were stupid, but because no one around us did it. In an environment that does not look toward the future, hardly anyone in that environment thinks about the future. Only much later, when life fell into its hardest phase, did I begin to meet different people with clearer financial thinking. I sat at the same table with people who knew how to plan, people who saw money as a tool, not something to chase. People who talked about the future, goals, vision, habits. And what shocked me most was, when I sat with them, I began to think differently. I began to ask myself, why have I never planned? Why don't I set aside a part for the future? Why do I live so emotionally? Why does money always leave me faster than others? No one taught me. No one forced me to do anything. I simply saw a different environment. And that environment lifted me up. A mentor told me a sentence I always remember. "Jim, environment is stronger than willpower. You can have the will to save, but if you live in an environment full of impulsive spenders, you will be pulled along. You may want to invest, but if you live in an environment that only knows how to enjoy, you will be mocked whenever you talk about the future. You may want to change, but if your environment resists change, do you have enough strength to stand firm? We are not as strong as we think. And the environment is stronger than we imagine. Today, environment is not just the people around you. Environment is also the social media you follow, the videos you watch, the people you listen to, the values you absorb every day, the false standards that the modern world suggests. An advertisement slide can make you spend money. A luxury brand bag on your news feed can make you feel inferior. A video flaunting a lavish lifestyle can make you believe you are lacking. We are easily pulled by our environment until we look back and realize we are living someone else's life. I want you to ask yourself something very important. Is my financial environment lifting me up or pulling me down? If the environment is pulling you down, you don't need to cut anyone off. Just change what you absorb every day. Read more about finance. Follow people with positive mindsets. Sit closer to people who build their future. Spend time with those who value money. Reduce the things that make you spend meaninglessly. With just one small change, you will see your thinking change. And when your thinking changes, your life changes. And then when I began to change my environment, I realized something even deeper. Environment can lift you up. Discipline can keep you on track. Investing can help your money grow. But there is one last principle that creates fullness in both soul and finances. And if you lack it, you will still feel you never have enough. Principle 6, give to receive. Of all the principles I learned, this is the one that changed me the most. Not in finances, but in who I am. When I was younger, I always thought that to give, I had to be rich first. I told myself, when I have extra, I'll share. But then I realized a simple, painful truth. When you don't share when you have little, you won't share when you have a lot. Because giving is not about money. Giving is about mindset. I remember once I met an old lady selling flowers on the street. That day it was cold and she looked tired. I only had a few small bills in my pocket, not much. But I bought a small bouquet and gave her a little extra. She held my hand very tightly and said, "Thank you. I've sold very little today." That moment didn't make me richer, but it made me more open and it helped me realize something. When you give, you don't lose anything. You are simply opening another door for yourself to step into a better version of who you are. I never forgot that feeling. A mentor once told me, "Jim, you will never become poorer because you gave, but you will become poorer if you keep everything to yourself." At first, I didn't understand. I thought, if I give, I will have less. But then I discovered money is like a stream of water. It needs to flow to stay pure. If you hold it too tightly, it becomes a stagnant puddle, foul, murky, and beneficial to no one. But if you let that stream flow, it will constantly be renewed, and it will return to you in ways you never expect. I call that the flow of abundance. Giving is not only about helping others. Giving is also sharing knowledge, sharing opportunities, lifting up someone in difficulty, encouraging someone who has fallen, opening a door for someone facing a challenge, giving your time to listen, offering a kind word. Sometimes what you give is not money, but a piece of your heart. And strangely, the things you give from the heart have a way of finding their way back to you through paths logic cannot explain. I have seen many people who are wealthy but not happy. They have money, assets, power, but they hold everything too tightly. They live in fear. Fear of losing, fear of lacking, fear of giving. They are rich in numbers, but poor in spirit. On the other hand, I have met people who are not very rich, but they live with an open heart. They share, they help, they lift others up, and their lives are filled with good things. Not because of magic, but because when you give what is good, you attract what is good. Giving is a form of investment, an investment in relationships, in character, and in the very energy you carry through this life. I want to ask you a very small question, but one that may make you think. When was the last time you gave truly from the heart, not giving to receive something, not giving to be praised, Simply giving because you want your heart to expand a little more. Sometimes just one small action is enough to remind you that you are not lacking. You have enough to share, and you have enough to become the person you want to be. And as I walked with this principle, I suddenly understood something important. Financial freedom is not only about money, but also about the soul. When your soul is full, money will know its way to you. We have walked a long journey together. Looking back, you will see each principle does not stand alone. They form a complete circle, a compass that helps you step out of financial pressure and step onto the path of freedom. Principle 1, pay yourself first, laying the foundation for the future you want. Principle 2, spend with discipline, patching the holes that are draining you. Principle 3, let money make money, letting each dollar you have become a soldier that creates more value. Principle 4, emotional discipline, protecting you from short-term decisions that can ruin a long-term future. Principle 5, financial environment, reminding you to find the right place, the right people, the right frequency to grow. Principle 6, give to receive, nurturing abundance from within, so money becomes a friend, not a burden. When you put these 6 together, you will realize financial freedom is not a destination. Financial freedom is a way of living. And the most amazing thing about this way of living is you can start today. No need to be rich. No need for special luck. No need for anyone to lift you up. Just one small decision, one first step, and one commitment to yourself. If these 6 principles touched you, if they made you look at your life in a different way, then I am very glad you were here today. And if you want to continue this journey with me, you can hit like, subscribe, and share this video with someone you care about. That is how you both support the channel and give someone the chance to change their life. Before ending, I want to ask you one question. Among the 6 principles today, which one will you start applying as of tomorrow? Leave a comment. I will read every line. And I want to close with a sentence I always carry with me, a sentence that has walked with me for many years. To become more, you must first become better. To have more, you must become a better version of yourself. Thank you for being here. See you in the next journeys with Jim Rohn Treasures.